Hey guys, welcome back to the Evolving Man Summit, the summit for a wholehearted and grounded masculinity. Today, my guest is Sir Adam Gilad.
I lived in England for 1 year. It doesn't make me a sir. But it doesn't make me,
Sir
it almost
Adam
made me
Gilad.
a man. Spend enough time in England, you become a man.
Dating relationship coach, working with men and women, supporting men in and living a bold, inspired, and free life. Stanford graduate, wrote Gargoyles for Disney.
I claim to fame, right?
What else do you want to share about yourself?
No, I've been a writer and thinker all my life. I was an academic for many years, screenwriter, producer for many years in Hollywood here. And I've worked with men and women for, 14 years at this point as a coach, writer, teacher, workshop leader. Bon vivant, like, adventurer, explorer. It goes from the heights to the depths, right? Deep learning all the time, and it never stops.
Always evolving.
Yeah. Well, catchy.
Cool. Well, I'm excited to have this time with you.
Yeah.
I would love to dive into the essence of how is it that you work with men, or what is it that you find most important when you work with men to teach them?
Yeah. Great question. Big question. So let me break it down. I work with different kinds of men on very different kinds of things. One of the things that's really gotten important to me is to start dissolving all these categories. Men's work, women's work, masculine, feminine even. I think that's become a trap. I've done a lot of work in masculinity, a lot of work in femininity, and those are really useful terms for sexual polarity and for connecting with a certain kind of essence that we all have. But honestly, in the last couple of years, I start with humane. I start with kindness, really, for all this work. I think while masculinity work and femininity work is obviously really important, that it can become too much of a framework for a person's self-development, okay? And that people get really caught up on ideas and concepts of masculinity, alpha particularly. I think it's a really destructive term in many ways. And it becomes more of a limitation than a runway for growth. So this is
awesome. Today I did a Facebook Live on exactly that topic, where I was like, masculine and feminine, it's helpful, as you said, like in terms of sexual polarity and in terms of getting a framework. But at some point it becomes limiting when I constantly track, like, oh, am I behaving in a masculine way right now? Like, is this? And then it's like, you're so much more than just your masculinity, and your masculinity always needs to be connected to your feminine side. Otherwise it's like, yeah, it's not whole.
It's really true. And look, it comes from, I don't know your background very well, but I was a very thoughtful, sort of poetic young guy, 6, 7, 8 years old. I was very connected to the natural world. I spent a lot of time in nature, loved language. And then, of course, I took on all these boy roles so I could compete and be a guy. And I wore that for my entire, young life. But it was always somewhat of a mask, right? It was always like the mask of masculinity, to quote my friend Lewis House. It wasn't my core soul. I have a very powerful masculine side, but I have a very powerful feminine side as well in the sort of common terminology. And I find that particularly in the dating world, there's been way too much of stress on, taking on this masculine role, because people who seek dating advice, for example, tend not to be in the more masculine sort of, Navy SEAL end of things. They tend to be not as confident and not as successful with women. And so they want to take that on. And I think it's important to play the full spectrum as a human being if you're interested in having an interesting life. If you're interested, you don't have to. You could just get a job and do your shit and watch Netflix and go through life. But if you're really interested in what it feels to be human, really test yourself. Go to workshops. Go to Spartan race on the male side, and then on the feminine side, do deep yoga, do deep connection work, what we call feminine and what we call masculine, by the way. But to really play those, the full spectrum of what it is to be a person. And please, please, please don't get too caught up on the terminology. Instead, feel what actually feels good and real for you. What you know, you mentioned my big 3 words in men's work is bold, inspired, and free. So pay attention to what inspires you. Forget about the fucking ideas about who's an alpha and who's this and what's masculine and what's feminine. And please, just like stay away from what a real man is, right? Like stay away from that language of real man, right? In times of physical danger, obviously there are traditional masculine roles that we need to step into.
Yeah.
I know some pretty kick-ass women too. But when we're not in these sort of physical danger, we get to actually explore our full humanity. And I think there's a lot of shaming around that for men. So I want to encourage, when you ask what do I work on with men? It depends on who the man is. It depends where he is in his life. It depends what kind of threats he's facing, what kind of opportunity he's facing, what's his context, what's his true heart, what inspires each of us individually as a person and as a man, and then once you identify what inspires you, what lights you up, then get bold about that and really, engage. Now we like to think of it as your masculine directive self, but women can do this well also. Really engage your boldness and really set a plan, set a system, create a quest in the language that I'm using right now in my new company called The Higher Game. Really, because I'm really kind of gamifying what it means to live a great life, because it's more fun, it's more creative, and I've done so much of this sort of man to man, eye to eye, let us move, I honor, it's all good stuff. It's important. I needed it. But now I'm taking it to a whole other level of sort of really putting it back into life as a heroic quest, as an epic journey into self-understanding, joy, connection, intimacy, power, impact, empathy. Like this is the game of life. So that's kind of the language I'm using right now. But all these stages are necessary. You've got to explore these traditional masculine parts of yourself. You've got to explore the traditional feminine parts of yourself, and then integrate them and see what's right for you. Everyone's different. There's no model.
Boom. Is there something that you find helps, because you were talking about, clarify what is it that you really, clarify what's on your heart, clarify what you're really passionate about, and then go for it. So what is it that is there something that helps at least most men in finding that?
Challenge. Challenge. You got to push your edge. I worked with David Data for a couple of years as his partner. And he always says that the feminine aspect of ourselves grows through praise, and the masculine aspect of ourselves grows through challenge, right? The way he often puts it is that women go through praise, men go through challenge. But I think he also understands, and he's so forceful in his articulation that people miss the nuance because he gets sort of hit into his forcefulness. But it's for both masculine and feminine sides of ourselves. It's not men and women. So yeah, there's a feminine side of ourselves that does grow through praise, but the masculine side absolutely grows through challenge, grows through challenge. So there's a great quote by Peter Diamandis. Where is he? Oh, there he is right there. My favorite books. Bold. Peter Diamandis, who created the X Prize. Amazing guy. He says, if you don't have a challenge, create one. If you're not challenged in your life as a man, you're going to get flabby and flimsy and uninteresting to yourself and to the women around you, probably, and to other people. So keep setting up challenges. For me, it's the home gym I just put in the corner over there in my library. It's creating a new business. Holy shit, am I challenging myself right now? I just told my partner, my girlfriend, that the first affiliate email went out for the webinar this Thursday, and she goes, "We're not ready." And I'm like, "That's right, we're not, but we will be by Thursday." And that is my masculine saying, "We're gonna fucking make this work," like now. And she's like a deep diver, meditation teacher, all this stuff. So she's bringing all that depth. But I set a challenge. I'm going to make this work. I'm going to make it happen in November when we're filming this, and it's working. So set yourself challenges along the way. Now, they could be big challenges. In my case, that's a big one. Starting a business is a big one. But even little challenges, 10 push-ups in the morning, right? 20, 30, 40, whatever you want to do. Greeting people eye to eye during the day. right? Genuinely asking how people are if you actually care, right? Little, what we call quests, right? These little challenges just to keep you alive to life so you don't just fall asleep and walk through numbly, which I think a lot of people do.
Yeah, I like that. And I find what for me is really helpful when I'm challenging myself is to remember why I'm doing this, because otherwise I start resisting and I start going like, well, you know, what's the point even? And I start to sabotage myself or not take it as seriously. But when I'm really clear on, well, okay, I want to do physical exercise because I really care about my health and I want to be fit and I want to, have the body that supports me in living a bold life, then it's easier to stay on track. I'm like, yeah, that's what I want to do.
Yeah, you have you have the context of an epic quest,
Hmm.
right? So I mean, I know I'm reaching for books all around me, but I do that. That's what I do. So I read this book right now called Super Better by Jane McGonigal, and she's an amazing woman. She's a Stanford professor, who is a specialist in game development, games, Halo, all that kind of stuff. And she got a concussion. She hit her head and couldn't remember anything, and she lost everything. She just couldn't remember. She was in a fog. She had suicidal thoughts, which is apparently a side effect of concussions. And so she created this thing called Jane the Concussion Slayer, a game. Like, she turned it into a game, right? So the context now of everything she did was part of that epic quest of, I'm going to slay this concussion, right? Now what you're saying is absolutely true. I want to make sure I hone my body because I have this epic quest of whatever it is that you want to create in your life. For me, my epic quest right now is to create great abundance. I have a relatively new relationship year that is really fulfilling, to create just this amazing explosion of honesty, authenticity, growth, vulnerability, travel, creativity, movies, program creation. I mean, it's an amazing relationship. And I'm really like, I want to stay physically healthy. I'm significantly older than she is. That sounds weird. She's not like 10, but so I want to stay physically fit.
Fine.
Yeah, right. It depends on your country, but I want to stay, in my power for as long as possible. So I am highly motivated in my quest, right, to stay fit. So one of the things I'm doing in my work for men and for women is this new company we have called The Higher Game, where we're taking all this personal development work and putting it in the context of an increasing set of challenges and quests, right, along the lines of your highest goals. So that's something that's been exciting for me.
Nice.
Yeah, it's fun.
I was talking to another speaker about the importance of play in our development, and it points to something similar that you're talking about, that when we can gamify our challenges and add the fun aspect to the whole, like, I'm a warrior and like I'm gonna fucking do it,
Right.
we learn so much faster and it's just so much more joyful.
It's joyful, and it opens up areas of our brain that are otherwise closed.
Yeah.
It opens up whole senses of possibilities. It awakens us to our superpowers, that otherwise might be latent, because we're naturally creative beings. I almost did my dissertation, by the way, on play. So this is a huge part of who I am. I ended up doing it on how do we create meaning, which sounds more important. But my heart, and it's funny, when I passed my PhD exams, my favorite advisor took me by the shoulders. He goes, Adam, he goes, you passed, but you're happy, you're funny. Get out of academia. We're all miserable. Like, he literally took me by the shoulders. Go to Hollywood, be a writer, do something else. Get out of here. Like, he really told me that. Because I'm a very playful person. I worked in comedy and all that kind of stuff. But I really did a lot of research around play before gamification became a word. But play, and there's a really interesting point here, and this goes back to identity, what we were talking about before. Like, how do you identify? What labels do you put on yourself? Which I don't think are good, not a good thing to do. We call ourselves Homo sapiens sapiens, right? Which means man who thinks about thinking. So it's actually not just Homo sapiens, it's Homo sapiens sapiens. We reflect upon thinking. We're reflective. And that's a nice definition of who we are. But who came up with that, right? Guys who think a lot, right? Guys at universities, researchers, scientists. This is what we are. But there are other traditions of identifying who are we really as, what's our essence as humans. One tradition is Homo faber, which is man that makes, like fabricate. The word, you probably know that word in German, right? Faber. And another one is Homo ludens, which comes out of a Dutch tradition. The root, which is the same word as like ludicrous or ludic, like ludic muscles that make us smile. The man is a playful being. Woman is a playful being. That our core may not be the warrior archetype, right? Our core may not be thinking all the time. Our core may be fucking playing. Like, we just love to play. Children love to play. Adults love to play when they're given an opportunity. And when we undertake this masculine subject that you bring up today in a spirit of playfulness, sort of it loosens that kind of stick up the ass nature of so much men's work. You know what I mean? I have a stick up my ass, I'm standing, I'm breathing, I'm dropped in. I remember a woman said to me, like, about one group of men's work, she goes, stop being so fucking dropped in and just talk to me.
And they're like,
I'm dropped into my masculine. So they're all aspects of who we are. Again, I just want to emphasize, find what's unique to you. Find your unique expression, lights you up, because everyone here has a unique sort of fingerprint of who they are. And there's no rule for how to be a man.
Yeah. What I find so fascinating about this aspect of play is that because it's so creative and it's not predictable, it also does something to how we self-identify. Because in this playfulness, you see how fluid things are and how paradoxical we are as human beings. And I think that's often opposing the kind of, this kind of self-identification of this like earnest spiritual seeker who is like,
which is an important part of us as well. Right. But it gets really boring for me, right? Everyone is different.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't want to put that down. In other words, being an earnest spiritual seeker is fucking awesome. I spent a lot of time being an earnest spiritual speaker. I've meditated in Nepal and India. I've been in deep Talmudic study and Kabbalistic study in Jerusalem. I've, been in the Amazon with shamans. I mean, that is serious shit if you've done ayahuasca. And I've studied, so there's a time to be serious. But, as it says in Kohelet, or Ecclesiastes, I don't know what you call it in German, the book ascribed to Solomon, there's a time to sow and a time to reap, a time to be an earnest masculine guy, and a time to fucking play and have fun and go party and celebrate life, right? So the balance you find, and I really want to get this out there because I think there's a lot of shame. I know there's a lot of shame because I've worked with thousands of guys around, I'm not man enough, I'm the wrong kind of, fuck that shit. Who are you? What makes you happy? What turns you on? What makes you feel connected to your life force? What makes you connected to other people? What makes you feel connected to the living world around you? What makes you feel fired up? You don't have to fulfill a role that someone else said a man is, And there's plenty of good masculine models out there. It's fine, but pick what works for you. There's no one's watching. There's no Santa Claus. There's no one going to decide at the end of the year whether you're man enough. People will tell you if they think you're man enough, especially women who want to hurt you, right? But that's just their opinion, So you've got to, like, the joy is to create your own sort of pillar of, this is who I am. I have masculine sides, I have feminine sides. I love these qualities of the masculine. I love these qualities of what we call the feminine. I'm going to create myself. And that to me is living what I call a bold, inspired, and free life. Yeah.
And there's a paradigm shift in what you're describing, because I think so many of us are stuck in this kind of, who am I supposed to be? Like, I think especially people with a high sensitivity, like constantly kind of scanning the environment, trying to understand, how do I need to behave in this environment to fit in and to be loved and appreciated? And like in what you're describing, it's a complete switch. It's like, who am I right now? What is coming out of me right now?
That's a great question. Adding right now, by the way, that's an exercise I give. When people ask me questions, I add, well, right now or until now. Like, you start contextualizing things in time. Like, oh, I'm this kind of person until now, right? Or who am I right now? I don't know. Who are you right now? Who are, I have a book coming out called The 21 Gateways of Boldness. And I used to call it the 21 laws of boldness, but I'm moving away from the word laws. And they're really gateways, you know? And the first gateway to living a bold life is chapter 1 is you are a verb. You're not a noun. You know, you're an unfolding mystery. You don't know everything about yourself. You don't know where you're going, right? You don't even know everywhere you've been yet until you've processed it, right? You'll have realizations about your life like, oh shit, I didn't realize that was true about me. So who am I right now? Where am I right now? What am I feeling? What is my body doing? Where's my weight? Where's my energy? Am I in my chest right now? I have a lot of energy in my chest because I had coffee and because I had a great morning of work. It's almost noon here. So I got up and by the way, I have a pattern. I go to my hot tub and I read for about an hour. I take notes and I create and I dream, and I'm working on a big aspect of my work. And then I go work and I knock my most dial moving activity of the day, right? So this morning it was refining this webinar that's really important that we're doing Thursday. And so I feel great right now. I came home, my woman was here. She gave me a nice protein shake with ginger, and I'm happy. So like you can probably feel it, right? So I'm uplifted. That's where I am right now. I'm not there all the time, but that's right. So you see, who am I right now? Well, I'm a verb. Right now, I happen to be in a state of uplift. I'm really excited. I'm full of energy. I'm looking forward to lunch. I have this nice cold drink in me. I meet this new guy in Vienna and talking to guys around the world. So I feel good. Like right now, that's who I am. Now, does that define me? No. That's where I am right now. In my work, I urge men, because it loosens you up. It frees you up to be able to stop in a moment of time and say, where's my body? You know? Where's my attentiveness? How aware of my surroundings am I? By the way, great masculine and feminine quality. By the way, I could do both versions of it. You know, they're just versions of the same thing. And really take stock of where's my body, where's my attention, where's my eyes, where's my energy, where are my thoughts, where are my feelings, where are my regrets, where are my hopes, you know, right now. And play with it. Play with it. Like instead of work with it, play with it. And discover who you really are as life goes on. You and I are probably not the same age, but I can tell you that, you know, it doesn't stop. You know, and David Data says on the first page of Way of the Spirit Man, he goes, stop expecting your life to get easy. Stop expecting your woman to get easy. It doesn't stop until you die, you know? So stay in the challenge, stay in the play. It doesn't end. Long answer.
There's an element of surrender in what you're saying, that, you know, it's this kind of letting go of control of, that's what I need if I really want to allow myself to be in the present moment and allow myself to be with everything that is right now. It's like, I need to, there's a certain release that needs to happen.
Yeah, it's, again, that's such a rich vein here. Because a lot of guys, especially guys who may be listening to this, who maybe want to develop that more traditional masculine, first they need to develop that. Then you can release it in a sense, right? You have to gain that strength in order to release the strength. If you try to release before you gain the strength, you're not really releasing anything, right? So there's a process of life of gain and release, of mastery, right? And then letting go of all that. Some of it's natural and some of it's intentional. I would say that, you know, for me, hitting 40 was, people like to call it a midlife crisis. If you do it right, it's a midlife awakening, right? Because you wake up if you're paying attention. In the first part of your life, you're developing your identity. This is who I am. I'm not my father, right? I'm not my mother. I'm not my community. I'm not my religion. I'm not my town. I'm not this belief system. I'm not a consumer, whatever. I'm not a capitalist, whatever it is. All the identities that you're born into, you start shedding them to individuate, right? And you say, this is my identity. This is who I am. This is who I am. If you're paying attention around 40, you've discovered that you've been on this roller coaster, you know, going up, 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 chug, 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 like a roller coaster, till about 40, the identity cart, building your identity. And then you get to 40 and you look over the edge and go, oh shit. Oh, what's down there? Well, that doesn't look so good. Fuck that shit. I'm going to enjoy the ride, right? So in a sense, people get liberated from identity if they're paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
right? They stop being so attached. And it's hard because you've worked so hard to create this identity as a man, as a person, particularly as a man, though, socially. And then you start realizing it doesn't mean anything internally. It's just social shit, right? And then you get to actually decide, do you want to live a liberated life and follow what we're talking about in the beginning? Like, what's inspiring to you? That's where it begins. What works for you? Or you're going to keep following the social strictures that you've built around yourself to prove that you're actually somebody. Because that's just social. And then if you let go, when you surrender, but only once you've developed a sense of self. You know, there's a great term by Robert Masters. I'm having fun. I love books, right? Robert Masters wrote this book, To Be a Man, Masters. Okay book. It's got some good stuff. He's a little full of himself, frankly, but he has a lot of good stuff. Okay? But he came up with the term spiritual bypass, which is a really important term. And I think there's a cognate here, masculine bypass in a sense. So what spiritual bypass is, you may know, people who don't know, is that people don't deal with their emotional trauma. They don't deal with their emotional gaps, their blockages, what David Data calls kinks, right? And they immediately go to the spiritual, like you were saying, like release, surrender, meditate, love all beings, right? Like, it's good. Those are all good things. But if you haven't dealt with your emotional shit, you're still going to be an asshole because you haven't, to other people, and you're still going to be unfulfilled because you haven't actually worked through or played through. I like to call it skilled play, by the way, instead of work, because it's skilled play. You haven't worked with or played with the parts where you're contracted and you're not open and free. You just jump to the vision of being open and free without actually doing the emotional work. And it's kind of the same thing with masculinity, I think. In my experience, I needed to go out and build a business. I needed to go out, when I realized around 42, I need to be a leader of men. I've been a writer and a scholar all my life and a traveler. I've been on my own. But I want to build something. I want to be a leader. I want to develop that. So I set my mind on that. Then once I did that, now I actually had something to release, right? I've actually built things in my life. Now I can release it. Now, there's some very spiritual people who are born into this earth in a very different way, and they're kind of born free, so to speak. I have a son kind of like that. I raised two sons, and they're very different, but they're both free in who they are, because I kind of infused them as best I could with a lot of this. And he's all love, he's an amazing guy. The other one's like a really intense musician and tech guy. And the other one, he had the best response to tech, to the Me Too movement I've ever heard. You have it there, I'm sure, right?
Sure.
So he said, Dad, he goes, it's not so complicated. Be a cool bro, not a creepy bro. And I'm like, yeah, that kind of sums it up. Be a cool bro, not a creepy bro. So it's all very clear to him, So he didn't have to go through the struggles I had to, right? Like I said, we all have individual stories. So there's a surrender and a release, but at the same time, there's also a refining and a honing of your sword. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I was actually in a men's group last night, and an anthropologist who's a member said something very interesting I didn't know. He said, when a samurai kills someone in battle, right? First of all, they've already prepared their death ahead of time. He was actually talking about a Lakota tradition. They prepare their death. They've already died before they go into battle, so they're free, right? And they do this ritual with their name on a stick. Samurai, if they kill somebody, apparently, and I can't vouch for this, I just heard it last night. If they killed someone in battle, they had to take 6 months off and do calligraphy and tea ceremony and gardening to rebalance their masculine and feminine. How fucking cool is that? I never heard that before. So we're always balancing, right? We're always coming back to what's right for us and making sure we don't get pulled into these false social calls into masculinity, femininity, freedom, surrender. It's a verb. We're in process all the time. We're always calibrating. Now we have to pay attention. And as you know, the heart of it starts with just being aware of what your body's doing, what your mind's doing. So self-awareness is where it begins.
Yeah, this is exactly the thought that I had now as you were talking, that's the only compass I can truly have, is to again and again go inside and see, well, what is it that feels true to me right now? And it might be something that someone else is telling me, oh, I've transcended that already by far, but fuck it, maybe that's exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. Like, where does the idea come from that I need to get somewhere where I'm not yet, and I need to try to skip some kind of experiences? Like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot to say. I was just reading yesterday's book in the hot tub was a book by an American playwright named David Mamet, who's known as pretty much the premier playwright in America. He wrote Glenn Ross, you might know. Coffee is for Closers. Look it up on YouTube. It's one of the best monologues in the history of theater. He's a tough guy. I know him. I met him here in LA. And he writes this amazing book about the purpose of drama. Like, why does drama matter? Real drama, like not drama between men and women, but like the stage, great storytelling, great writing versus pop pablum. And he says something really interesting. He says, good drama teaches us, it not teaches us, it serves us because it doesn't give us answers. Bad theater is like, child molestation is bad, and here's a play about child molestation, and you come in and you meet this character and he's a child molester and it's bad and you're confirmed in your belief. That's not drama, right? That's what he calls a problem play. Drama exposes what you said, the contradiction of life. Drama exposes the fact that even when we accomplish something, it's not over. We're not done. Drama is, ready? Resistance to comfort, resistance to stagnation. Drama ultimately is resistance to life, challenge, like we were talking about. If you don't have a challenge, create one. Resistance so that you can achieve a new level, right? Which doesn't answer anything, by the way. But as he says this beautiful statement. He says, really great drama and really great men's work or women's work makes you a little more kind and a little more humble. That's what he said. It doesn't answer the great questions of life. It exposes life. And in that process, we become a little more kind and a little more humble, which brings us back to our very opening statement about starting with our humanity instead of labels of masculinity and feminine. And for my next trick, let's talk about gargoyles. Yeah.
Yeah, this is powerful stuff. It's making me think a lot about this kind of thinking. I've had this for such a long time, really strongly, and it still appears at times. This kind of when an intense emotional process is coming up, I'm like, okay, let's just go through this because maybe it's the last one. Maybe after this, salvation will finally come. And it's this kind of this kind of hope rising.
Well, yeah.
And then maybe for a moment, I get a taste of it, and it's like, fuck. The next challenge is here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, Data talks about this really well. I also studied eschatology. I almost made that my subject for my dissertation.
What is that?
The end of times. Why are people so fixated on the end of times and the notion of end of times, what that does to us? Like when we think about the end of humanity, the end of the earth, apocalypse, like what's the psychological impact of thinking about that? Why do we do it? But Data actually is great on this. He talks about the masculine, men generally, desiring release from pain, release from struggle, release from challenge. It's hilarious. I mean, this is the humor. This is why great drama or great work makes us a little more humble, a little more kind, a little more empathic, a little more forgiving of ourselves and others. Because here we're saying life is all about challenge, and this is what makes us feel alive, and this is how we grow as a man. At the same time, we're dying to get out of it, right? What do men like to do? Men like to sit back and watch the game on TV and like immerse themselves passively in something. And he talks about, the orgasmic ecstasy that men express when goal, right? Or when they reach the end zone in football, right? There's this masculine desire to escape into nothingness. Dr. Manhattan, if you remember from, what's that? The Watchmen. It's a great sort of comic book series. Just to go and meditate on Mars. It's like the ultimate. And look at all masculine spiritual traditions, right? Meditation, right? Deep prayer, solitude, right? Asceticism. There's as he says, one of his great lines is for the masculine, nothingness is bliss, and the feminine is a whole lot of something. Right? So bliss is nothing, and the feminine is a whole lot of. So this is the humor of this whole game we're in, man. We adore challenge. We love challenge. We feel alive through challenge, and at the same time, we have this fantasy of being done, which it never is until we're done, right? And at the same time, masculine bliss is like just having nothing to do. You know, it's over. The battle's over, and at the same time, we crave the feminine to make us feel alive and engaged again. So we're fucked. You know, we're in the game. We're in this verb game of self-contradiction. So yeah, I totally get that when you say like, oh, I really want to have achieved that. I felt the same way all my life. I think I've given up on that at this point. I think I really have. Where I wanted to, if I can only get here, then I'll be okay. If I can only get here, then I'll be okay. Yeah. You're okay. You'll just be okay in a different flavor later.
Yeah.
My nose is cold. This is cold in California. It's like 68 degrees.
I only know Celsius, so.
It's warm. It's 22.
Oh.
25 is room temperature, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's warm and it's cold for me. So there's a start.
Yeah. Wow.
So it's really important to me at this point in my life. And again, I keep saying at this point in my life because it's changed, man. It's changed, right? A lot of things that were very important to me are not important to me anymore. Compassion is really important to me. Being true to yourself is really important to me, and what I have to teach at this point in my life. Treating life as skilled play, like we do in the Higher Game, my new company, is more important to me than work, men's work. And this came out of my work around relationships, because I do a lot of work around relationships, you know, intimacy. And people always talk about, well, marriages are work, relationships are work. And I'm like, hang on a second. No, they're not work. They're actually, how about we look at it as skilled play, right? It's the same thing, but with a different intention. So, and that really works. And we use this in my relationship, right? Like, how can we play with this moment? Okay, you're feeling cranky. I'm feeling cranky. What do you want to do? Like, right? And it's fun because we see that it's a game and that you can play with the moment rather than have to work through it and have it be a burden on you.
Yeah. It's like, for me, it's the difference between working through something or playing with something.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And this is, if I ever feel courageous enough to write a big book on Jordan Peterson, this is where I diverge from him. You know, his approach is very much life is a burden, pick up the cross, go up the hill. This is what it means to be a man. I'm like, yeah, it's part of it, but that's not all of it, dude. You know, that's what I was talking about. That's what you have to develop in order to release, you know, to hone your sword, to be the samurai, you know, to have those qualities of the warrior who can push through, but also have those qualities of the lover, right? The magician, the king, the prince, the knight, the jester, like develop all of it. But I'm not putting down, and I want to be really clear, I'm not putting down that sort of life is a burden, life is work thing. It is, there's a lot of work, but it's not the whole thing. And I want to encourage men to really explore all aspects of themselves and not get too caught up in one sort of strain or one archetype.
Yeah. And I hear, you know, how it's so easy to that's why I like that you're emphasizing this so strongly, because I think it's very easy to shame yourself, you know, any stage that you are in, whatever is going on right now, that's it. Like, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Don't look for like,
oh yeah, I'm an expert at self-shaming. Oh yeah, I got lots of experience. So it's a couple of years ago, you know, my best friend, I went to Cambridge in England for a bit, and my best friend there, we were both sort of doing international diplomatic studies and stuff, and he just got named British ambassador to Japan. And I like curled up on my couch for an afternoon going, what the fuck have I done with my life? Like, you know, I went into this shame. And then I went to see him in England, and we took a walk around London, Surrey, I think it's called, this green belt. And we were just comparing notes from our lives. And he's like, your life's way more fun than mine. Like, I have to go to meetings all day. I have to cut ribbons. I have to be formal. You're having fun. You know, you're growing. You're doing your own thing. So it's funny. It's easy to shame yourself. But we lose track of, like you said, being just here and now. This is, I'm okay. I'm on the path, right? And the more intentional you can be, growing in, let's use the term, the epic quest of your life. Like, what's the quest? Like, what do you really want to do with your life? As long as you can move consistently in that direction, it's a very fulfilling life. You know, as long as it's true to your quest and not Jordan Peterson's or your dad's or whatever, whoever else is out there.
David Deda's.
David Deda, absolutely. Yeah, I call Jordan Peterson the pissed off dad of the men's movement. He's like, like the get off my lawn strain of masculinity. Yeah, he's angry about something. David's a whole other case. David's a very interesting guy, but he's, again, that's his personality. You know, he's a yogi. That guy is he's a certain personality type. So that his truth is very strong for him. Yeah, valuable for everybody, but not definitive. Yeah.
And that's the skill I find when you learn from people, to see that the way they're expressing truth is because of their personality, and it's not because they found the ultimate truth, but it's like, that's their way of expressing it.
You're way ahead of me. It took me decades to learn that. Absolutely. Absolutely true. I'm what's called the 7 on the Enneagram. You know, classic pleasure seeker, pain avoider, you know, creator. That's me. So I teach what I know, but I'm always careful to say, hey, this is true for me. It doesn't mean it's true for you. There are different, just like we all carry different archetypes within ourselves. We carry different aspects. If you like the Enneagram, which I like it, different aspects of what it is to be a human being. You know, part of us is a supporter. Part of us is a perfectionist achiever. Part of us is, like me, an adventurer. Part of us is like a monk. You know, I think David Data is probably a 1 on the Enneagram, kind of a monist, you know, someone who's very severe, right, in their pursuits, and they're very accomplished in their narrow pursuits. So they're all different parts of ourselves. So gather, test. And for me, the test is see what lights you up, see what makes you feel alive. That to me is if you're not doing that, you're wasting your life. In my humble opinion.
What is it that you would say to people who are listening to this and who are going, well, sounds great to be all playful, but this is really not, you know, like, it would feel completely fake if I would try to, if I would tell myself now, oh, I just need to be more playful. Like, people who are going through a tough time who...
It's not about being playful. It's about contextualizing challenge, not as burden, but as skilled play. It's different. You know, play is a funny word because on the one hand, it's like, oh, you know, there's unstructured play, like running around like a crazy person, like a 3-year-old toddler, playing, you know, throwing things in the air. That's fun. It's unstructured. Skilled play is LeBron James, right? So I'm not saying just be playful. I'm saying take the challenges of life and approach it as, hey, I can gain skills in this area and I can play with it and create with it rather than feel shamed and burdened by it. That's what I mean. Right? I want to be really clear about that. Yeah. It's just a way of opening up new pathways by taking away the shame and the burden and the work aspect. And again, this comes out of my work in relationships. When you open up your playful creative side, you become more creative. You find other solutions. Your brain operates differently, structurally. So that's what I mean. I want to be really, you know, I mean, go out and play, have a great time. Go to Burning Man. Absolutely. I love Burning Man. But I also love serious study as well, right? But it's done in the context of, am I gaining skills to play this game of life in a more efficacious, fun, meaningful, fulfilling way, right? Am I playing this game rather than am I laboring under the burden of an expectation that God or my father or masculinity, you know, puts on top of me? Yeah, that's what I mean.
And for me, there's one element that's been very present recently is how we make, like, being challenged wrong. Like we feel ashamed when something is not going well, when we try something new and we're not immediately absolute masters. Like there's something in our culture that makes it hard to be a beginner,
Yeah.
where it's not being encouraged and like, well, great, look, here's an area that you can really develop. It's more like, well, you know, that's embarrassing.
Yeah. It's a real problem. You know, the human brain's a funny thing. We have access to all knowledge now. We have access, we see wealth, we see accomplishment, and we want to get there because it's right in front of our eyes because we're visual. Now we can see it, right? It's like a fingertip away. All, you know, and so much marketing is around that. You know, you're one funnel away from wealth. If you do this one thing, you know, it's not true. And it's true. And it's very frustrating. I think it's very frustrating for people because they want to be super talented right away. And of course, we love the stories of the people who come out of nowhere and are suddenly multimillionaires or win whatever The Voice or whatever show is on your country. You know, Austria Has Talent, whatever it is. I think that's one of the many dangers of our technological moment. The other one is a lack of sustained focus. Mm. Yeah. You can't create great things, I don't think, in my humble opinion, without sustained focus. Whether it's a piece of writing or thought or self-reflection. Netflix is always not close, right? And if not Netflix, YouTube, and if not YouTube, Spotify, and we just fill our brains and we constantly feel, and it's wonderful. I mean, I love learning and I love experience, but you've got to unplug. You've got to have periods of uninterrupted self-reflection. If you're going to actually create, if you want to create anything great. Not everybody does, by the way. Some people, that's okay. They want to be a great lawyer, doctor. They can be great at that. You have to have pretty sustained focus to learn those things. But I'm talking about like if you want to, you know, as a creative person, if you want to really dive deep, as I said, so you are, you know, if you really want to dive deep, it's very difficult to do that without really sustained solitude, focus.
Totally.
Yeah.
Adam, I would like to slowly come to an end of this awesome conversation.
It's a pleasure, man.
How can people reach you? And would you share with us anything, you know, you were talking about the higher game, say something that is coming up in December or beginning of next year, something you'd like to share with us?
So a couple things. People, if they want to learn about me, adamgilad.com. I have a book coming out called The 21 Gateways. Boldness, or Boldness Code, I may call it. So if you're on my list, keep an eye out there. On Facebook, the Bold Life Community. The Higher Game, man. So the Higher Game is kind of this culmination of all the work I've done in my whole life, actually. And what we're doing is we are training local leaders, anyone who's really interested in men's work, women's work, to lead what we call mastery circles. It's a full curriculum of personal mastery, of core groundedness, creativity and sexuality, power, impact, heart, intimacy, connection, speaking your true voice, living by your vision. So there's like 6 areas. And we bring people through games nights. We call them mastery circles, but they're games nights. But it's, again, it's serious play. It's not frivolous play. It's serious play. And then these nights are connected by a series of quests, like activities, missions. You could call them practices in between each, so that you actually start instantiating these new skills and these new habits into your life, so that you actually do transformation. So I've been doing this a long time. People do great weekends. There's great weekend retreats, right? We all know that. There's men's circles where you come in and do something great, and then you go home and forget, and then you come back. So what I've done is created something that's fun and engaging, that really works the whole human system, both for men and women. We have men's and women's groups, and is connected so that it's a consistent practice or quest, right? We love using the word of gamification because it's more fun. And I'm really excited about this. So we've got our first leaders in about 20 cities here in the States, and we're just about to announce it in the beginning of 2019 to the bigger world. We've been testing it, and it's really fun. It's a great opportunity for anyone who wants to be a leader. Go to thehighergame.com and check it out, see if you're interested in being a leader. But I'm really fucking excited about this. I haven't been this excited about a project for a while. So we're building something I think is beautiful, impactful. It's really to change people's lives. create communities, and give leaders an income, by the way, give them a business to build. So that's what I'm up to these days. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll put up all the links on the interview page.
Thank you. Good
Cool.
work, man. This is fun. Austria. Welcome to the world of what men's work, you know? It's like, that's a nice addition. You're a very thoughtful dude. Really a pleasure.
I appreciate it. Yeah, just there's lots of, you know, awesome men's work happening in Europe at the moment. Still kind of underground, but yeah, very interconnected, lots of really heart-centered, generous men coming together and creating amazing experiences. So
I'd love to see what I noticed so many names I didn't know on your list of summit speakers. And I'm really curious to see, like, each country has its own neuroses, you know? And
what do you mean? We don't have
what?
these?
Yeah, Austria. Yeah.
Let's not go there.
And like the American neurosis is like, it's like come out in the last two. I mean, the shadow side of America has really burst forward in whole new ways. But it's interesting, you know, for countries, and I'll just go back to what we were talking about. There's I think he's Austria, Otto Rank, who was a student of Freud. He was his other great student.
What was his name?
Otto Rank.
Oh,
Yeah, he's fucking great. He also broke with Freud, and he said this, and this is true for countries as well as individuals, and kind of our theme for the day. He said that unlike Freud, who was trying to make psychology into a science, he says we're not neurotic, we're not broken because we're not neurotic because we're machines that are broken, which is what Freud was trying to. That was the context he was working with. He says we're neurotic because we're stories that need to be told. We're neurotic because we're stories that need to be told. So parting word, you know, for different countries, but to the individual guys listening, like what's the story you want to tell? And you get to choose your own adventure, you know, and until you live your true story, and that's like the fifth sort of module of our higher game curriculum, is speaking your truth. Until you live your truth, you're gonna be twisted up, you know, trying to fit in ways that don't make you happy. So find your story. Thanks, man.
Thank you, Adam.